विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मोकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणम्। Hare Krishna and welcome back to this episode of the Mahabharata. In the last episode we saw how Krishna and Balaram had proceeded from Dwaraka and come to Hastinapura to share the grief of the Kaurava household upon the news that the Pandavas had been burned to death in the house of Sherlak. And while Krishna and Balaram were there, suddenly Satyabhama appeared in Hastinapura and she was extremely in a very disturbed situation, and it looked like she was bringing some news of some bad happenings in Dwaraka. Actually, Satrajit had been a king who was subordinate to the Yadavas. And like we had discussed last time, Satrajit had appeased Suryadeva and he had obtained a Samantaka money from him. And Satrajit's daughter was Satyabhama, who was extremely beautiful and highly qualified. Naturally, many kings had approached Satrajit seeking the hand of Satyabhama, not only because she was beautiful and qualified, but also because they were attracted by the opulence of the Samantaka money, which could produce one mound of gold daily. Whoever would become the son-in-law of Satrajit would have access to that Samantaka money. And Satrajit, wanting to strike up good relations with the various kings, had promised Satyabhama's hand as well as the Samantaka money to many princes. Actually, he should not have done that, but he could not refuse whoever came and approached him, and he promised many people. In due course of time, when Satrajit handed over Satyabhama to Krishna, it generated a lot of ill will amongst those people to whom Satrajit had promised the Satyabhama's hand. There was a lot of enmity, animosity, envy amongst the hearts of all these people who felt they had been cheated. Rightly so, because Satrajit had promised them and he had not kept his word of honor. Now, when Krishna and Balaram left Dwaraka, many of the people in Dwaraka, they got together and they all started hatching a conspiracy. They were all aggrieved. They were all people who had a lot of anger in their heart towards Satrajit. They all got together and because of the shared grief, all of them were thinking how to teach this Satrajit a good lesson. Finally, all of them got together and they decided one of them should attack Satrajit and murder him. And so amongst all of these people, one of them was a person called Shatadhanva. This Shatadhanva was already known to be a rogue. He was a kind of outlaw kind of person. So you can say in one way Shatadhanva was given the supari, the contract to kill Satrajit. And so this Shatadhanva, armed with various knives and daggers and all that, he broke into the house of Satrajit in the middle of the night. And when Satrajit was sleeping, he slaughtered him in his sleep. And then he captured the Samantaka money and took it away. In the morning, when his body was discovered, Satyabhama was completely distraught. And everybody knew that Satrajit had been murdered. And Satyabhama wanted that whoever did this grievous sinful act, whoever committed this grievous crime, should be suitably punished. And she knew that Krishna, her husband, was eminently capable of meting out just punishment. So what did she do? She took the body of Satrajit and preserved it in a tank of oil, because she wanted Krishna to see the body of her father, how he had been mercilessly slaughtered in his sleep. And having made this much arrangement, Satyabhama set out from Dwaraka to Hastinapura herself. And this is how Krishna and Balaram saw Satyabhama suddenly appearing in Hastinapura in a distraught condition. Satyabhama narrated whatever had happened to Krishna. And immediately Krishna and Balaram took leave of the Hastinapura, took leave of the Kaurava household people, and they immediately returned to Dwaraka. And in Dwaraka, when Krishna saw the body of Satyajit and how all the women folk were weeping over him and they were lamenting very badly, Krishna did his investigations and he found out that Shatadhanva was the person who had murdered Satyajit. And so by then, what had happened? By then, Shatadhanva had got the news that Krishna and Balaram have returned. And suddenly, a fear, deep fear gripped his heart. Now, if I am identified and if I am captured, what will happen to me? I will lose my life. So what he thought, he went back to all the co-conspirators, those who had commissioned him to commit the murder. And he approached each one of them and he told them, please give me your protection, somehow you protect me from Krishna and Balaram. Each one of them refused. They said, Krishna and Balaram, sorry, even the Devatas cannot stand in front of them. We are nobody. We cannot give you protection. Finally, Shatadhanva went to Akrura, who was Krishna's uncle, and he handed over the Samantaka Mani to him. And even Akrura refused to protect him. And so this Shatadhanva took a horse and he left Dwaraka. And he tried to flee as far as possible. But by then, Krishna and Balaram had already got the news. They had determined who was the culprit. And so, having found out that Shatadhanva was the criminal who had murdered Satrajit in his sleep, and that now he had fled on a horse, immediately Krishna and Balaram also got on horses and they also started pursuing him. For a long distance, Shatadhanva went on his horse, and how long will the horse will also go on? After some time, the horse gave up and it fell down. It dropped dead. So then from there, Shatadhanva started running on foot. And Krishna and Balaram, who were pursuing, at one point of time they came and they saw Shatadhanva's horse lying dead. In honor of and being very righteous people, according to the laws of Dharma, Krishna and Balaram, to give their opponent an equal opportunity, they got down from their horses and they also started pursuing Shatadhanva on foot. And this pursuit went over a very long distance. By the time Krishna and Balaram caught up with Shatadhanva, they had reached the outskirts of Mithila. Mithila is where current day Jharkhand and some portions of Nepal are there. You can imagine, from Dwaraka all the way they had reached to the borders of Mithila. And so then, finally, having caught up with Shatadhanva, Krishna and Balaram captured him and they killed him right there. And then, having killed him, Krishna searched Shatadhanva, but he could not find the Samantaka Mani. Now what to do? So at that time, Balaram informed Krishna that Krishna, it is better that you go back to Dwaraka, because the Samantaka Mani is not here with Shatadhanva, and on the way there is no chance that he could have stopped anywhere, because continuously we also have been pursuing him. So most likely that he would have left the Samantaka Mani with someone in Dwaraka itself. So better you go back to Dwaraka. I happen to know the king of Mithila. His name is Janaka. Of course, this is not the same Janaka as the mother of Sita, but at that time when Krishna and Balaram were present on this earth 5000 years ago, the king of Mithila at that time also happened to be named Janaka. So Balaram informed Krishna, this Janaka who is ruling over Mithila is a very close friend of mine. Since we have already come all the way here, I'll pay him a visit, stay for a few days, and then I'll come back. So Krishna went back to Dwaraka. And now when Krishna went back to Dwaraka, Akrura left Dwaraka because Akrura had the Samantakamani and he was afraid that he will also get implicated in this crime which Shatadhanva had committed. So he left Dwaraka and he went to some other place. But then Krishna, because he knows everything, he sent word for Akrura in a very pleasing tone, asking him, requesting him to come back. And when Akrura came back, Krishna informed Akrura that he was very well aware that the Samantakamani was in his possession. But then Krishna told Akrura that if the Samantakamani is not recovered, then there will always be questions raised. Already there had been a lot of rumors which had been generated about Krishna, about having stolen the Samantakamani even during the time of when Satrajit was alive. Krishna did not want a repeat of that. So he told Akrura, I have no desire to possess the Samantakamani, but for once, just once, in front of all the elders in the palace, you please show that this money is in your possession and then you can retain it. And so Akrura also displayed the money, saying that Shatadhanva had given it to him before he fled. And so like this, Akrura kept the Samantakamani with him, and in this way the matter was closed out. Now, Balaram, having reached the palace of the king of Mithila, was welcomed very warmly, and he was accorded all sorts of respects because the king Janaka of Mithila was a great friend of Balaram, and he was also a great devotee, he was a great Vaishnava. So to please him, to please that king, Balaram stayed for several months in Mithila. And it was during this time that Duryodhana took advantage of the news had reached Duryodhana that Balaram was staying in Mithila. And so Duryodhana immediately took that opportunity. He came to Mithila and spent several months learning the art of Gada Yuddha, how to fight with a mace, from Balaramji, because Balaramji is the greatest proponent of Gada Yuddha. His favorite two weapons are the Gada and the plow. So nobody can be more expert than Balaram, who is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And so Duryodhana came and became a disciple of Balaramji to learn Gada Yuddha from him. And so this is how Duryodhana became a highly skillful warrior in the use of the mace. Bhima was also a great warrior in terms of fighting with the Gada, fighting with the mace. But then Bhima relied more on his power, on his strength. Whereas Duryodhana, although he was far less powerful, far less stronger compared to, he was far weaker to Bhima, still Duryodhana was much more skillful than Bhima. And so this is how Duryodhana became a very skillful person as far as Gada Yuddha was concerned. Now, once Arjuna happened to be in Dwaraka. He was visiting Dwaraka to spend a few days with Lord Krishna, and he was staying along with all the Yadavas in their household. And in those days, the custom used to be that if anybody had some complaint, any of the citizens, any of the common men had any complaints, they had any problems to be solved, they could directly come to the court of the king and present their problems. And the king would try to resolve the problems expeditiously. There were no courts, there were no multiple layers of judiciary to go through. So justice was all very instantly served out, and the kings were eminently capable of giving out proper justice. Just like today's world, it may be very difficult to comprehend how, without the assistance of a entire judiciary where you have advocates and there is a court procedure and there is a process of presenting evidence, evaluating witnesses, and then finally the judge comes to a conclusion. Still, sometimes the judgments go awry. Then the people have the opportunity to appeal in a higher court. There also, in the higher court, if the people are not satisfied with the verdict, they can go on appeal to the Supreme Court. All these opportunities are available. So this is the modern day way of administering justice. So having been exposed to this kind of culture, it may be very difficult to us to comprehend how a king, a single person sitting all alone, if somebody brings a matter of some crime to him, how will he be able to mete out justice in a very short span of time? The fact is that to be able to mete out justice, it's not only evidence and the witnesses which matter, but it is also the capability of the person who is sitting in the position of the judge. If the judge is inefficient and is incompetent, no matter whatever the amount of evidence and witnesses present, he may still give a wrong judgment. That's what happens even today. Even the most efficient judges make a lot of mistakes. But if the judge is very competent and he is very intelligent and capable, then even in the absence of sufficient evidence, he can give very proper judgments. The example of this is the Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was one of the acharyas in the Vaishnava Sampradaya. Although he was a great Vaishnava, greatly liberated soul, he was an acharya in the Sampradaya, still externally he acted like a normal citizen, and he was acting as he was a district magistrate under the British government. So as a district magistrate, there would be many cases which would be brought to his table. Generally, in those days, in the British times, only the Britishers would be given opportunity to become district magistrate. Indian born people would all be given posts which were lower than district magistrates. But then the Britishers at that time recognized the special capability of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and they gave him the position of a district magistrate. And it is said that as a district magistrate, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in a matter of 1 hour, he would dispose about 25 cases. People just could not comprehend, they could not believe that one person could dispose of so many cases in such a short span of time. Cases which normally, if they would go to any other district magistrate, which would run on for years together, would be finished off in a few minutes' time by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So somebody may think, okay, simply just to maintain a record, he must have been simply, without paying any attention, he must have been left, right and center throwing the cases out. But that was not the case, because many of his judgments were taken to the superior courts by the people, because even those days that process of appealing to the higher courts were there. But it is a record that not even one judgment of Bhaktivinoda Thakur was ever overturned by the higher courts. All the higher courts found every judgment of his to be extremely sound and logical and watertight. There was no question of overturning the judgment in any manner. So you can imagine how efficient and capable Bhaktivinoda Thakur was. This was because he was empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he was not an ordinary jiva. He was an acharya, he was a representative of the Supreme Lord. So if the person sitting in the post of the judge is empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then very quickly he can see through what the people are saying, whether they are speaking lies or whether they are speaking the truth, and he can very quickly be guided towards the truth by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And that is how during the olden times the kings used to be able to mete out justice in a very short span of time. So like this used to be the system, that the citizens would come to the court of the king and present whatever problems they had to be solved by the king. The role of a king in those days was very, very responsible. In today's world, the kind of impression that we have about kings is they were all people who are into all sorts of illicit activities, simply enjoying the wealth which is not theirs, engaging in wine and women, and they were all people of loose moral character. This is the kind of impression we have of kings today. But in the Vedic times, at least 5,000 years ago, the role of a king was very, very responsible. So much so that if there is any climatic disturbance in the kingdom, the citizens would accuse the king of being adharmic. You can imagine the king is responsible to ensure that the rains come on time and the seasons are properly coming and going. Even excessive heat in summer and excessive cold in winter was also not to come about. That was the responsibility of the king. You can imagine that the person who sits in the throne, these are the expectations from him. Not that he will sit there and womanize and he will waste away all the wealth in all sorts of gambling and other such frivolous activities. No. The expectation from the citizens was king will ensure there are no earthquakes, he will ensure there are no floods, he will ensure there is no excessive heat during summer, he will ensure there is no excessive cold during winter, he will ensure proper rains during the rainy season, sufficient enough for the crops to grow nicely, etc., etc. These were the kind of this one. So, when Arjuna was sitting in along with the Yadava kings in that in the palace, one Brahmana, poor Brahmana, he came to the court of the Yadava kings, and he was very angry and disturbed, and he started accusing Ugrasena, who was supposed to be the king of the Yadavas during that time, and he started accusing him left, right and center. He said, you kings are all kings only in name. You have lost the sense of your duty. You are simply spending your time in sense gratification. You have no botheration about the citizens. Otherwise, how is it possible that so much irregularities are happening in the presence of the king? The citizens are being afflicted by irregularities. This kind of misruling by your dynasty is not at all suitable. You are all not fit to be kings. Like this he went on, he ranted and raved for some time. So, Arjuna was watching what was happening. Actually, Arjuna was not at the receiving end because he was just a guest. He had come from Indraprastha for a few days to spend a few days with his friend Krishna and with the Yadavas. After all, they were all close family members. This entire tirade by this Brahmana was directed against Ugrasena, Krishna, Balaram and all these people. So Arjuna was curious. He wanted to know what had happened. So Arjuna asked Krishna and Balaram, why is this Brahmana ranting and raving like this? Why is he throwing such wild accusations at you like this? So, what was the reason for that Brahmana to become wild and accuse the Yadavas, including the Supreme Lord Krishna and Balaram, in front of everyone as being sense gratifiers and as people who did not lack the qualification to become kings? Why was he throwing accusations like this? Please join us in our next session to understand about this. Thank you for joining us today. Hare Krishna. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.